Smarties, today Steph and I share the how and why you should be using photographs to support executive functioning with your learners. We share the origin story of this episode, and we talk about why you should be using tools that learners are already familiar with. And we give you several examples of how and when you can use photographs to reinforce your goals and work within session. If you are interested in working with us, please don't hesitate to sign up for a phone call on our websites. It is our favorite thing to get to talk to Smarties in person. And spoiler, you will actually talk to Steph and I. We are the ones who do the phone calls for both our practices. So if you would like to sign up with Steph's practice, it's www.myedtherapist.com and sign up for a phone call on her website. And her practice does all the things. And if you want to sign up with my practice, go to my website, www.kappedtherapy.com. We specialize in executive functioning skills challenges for learners 5th grade through adulthood. Let's dig in.
You want to learn faster, but sometimes working harder is just not the answer. You have to learn smarter. The Educational Therapy Podcast.
Hi, Smarties. Welcome to episode 301 of Learn Smarter, the Educational Therapy Podcast. I'm Stephanie Pitts.
And I'm Rachel Kapp.
And that felt really weird to say 301.
I'm still not over it.
When it becomes a new year and you don't say it quite right for a minute.
So basically what you're telling me is we'll get used to it when we're in the 400s.
Yeah.
Which is what we'll have. Okay.
Yeah, that's basically what I'm saying.
Okay.
So today we're going to talk about photographs, which I love.
Okay.
So tell me about how this episode came about.
Well, why do you love it?
Because I use photographs for everything.
Me too. As you know, I love doing stuff with my photographs. So that's like my hobby.
That is your hobby. Yes, it is.
So I follow this woman on Instagram and I'm totally happy to give her a shout out. It's Miss Freddie, 2 Ds. And she's all about photo maintenance and how to document memories. And I am the family documentarian of memories.
You're the family historian.
I'm the family historian in my little family. I love creating photo books, and we have annual photo backs going back as far as Adam and I have been together. And I am a couple years behind, but it's like something that I do for fun. I use a 1-second app every day.
I love that you do that. And you've been doing it for years.
Yeah. So at the end of the year.
And I count how many times when you post it, I count how many times I see myself.
I mean, every time we're probably together, I'm doing something that has to do with...
Yeah, no, I think there were like 10.
Yeah.
I counted.
Yeah, so on the last day of the year, I post a video in total, and it's really special. I started doing it when I was pregnant with Elliot, and so you see the whole pregnancy, and then you see the baby, and you see the baby get bigger, and same, obviously, with Owen. This is something that I realized that we were doing, and I knew you were doing it too, and I think a lot of people are doing it, but I think it's important whenever we have something that is sort of inherent for us to be explicit, because a lot of the work that we do is taking the implicit and making it explicit, especially when it comes to executive functioning skills. So this episode came about because I'm working with a college learner. We started in the middle of the semester, and so, you know, we always start with foundational systems. So a system for planning your time, a system for planning yourself physically, and a system for planning yourself digitally, and maintaining those systems, of course. And he had papers scattered about, and a lot of them were important, but they were all in different places, which, you know, violates our everything in one place rule. Mm-hmm. So I began having him gather it all up, and let's just take a photo of all these things that are important, but they're not important for you to have a physical copy of. And the key to this is, if you're doing this with your learner, is to create an album on your phone. We're both iPhone users. Mm-hmm. I'm less familiar with Android, but I'm sure this is feasible with that as well. And you create an album, and you can literally label it important papers. And in his case, I went ahead and had him create a shared album with me and a shared album with his mom. So all three of us were on the album, so that everybody sort of had access to these important and critical papers. Then we had him throw it out. Also, everything should be backed up to the cloud. I was going to say that goes without saying, but We're making the implicit explicit, so I'm saying it. And I realized that this is a tool that you and I use a lot, and we hadn't really chatted much about it. So, Steph, what do you want to add? What are your thoughts?
Well, I was thinking about how, yes, using it with learners, but how using it in our own lives to do things. And when you need to remember something or you can't deal with it right now, that a photograph is a great tool and easier than writing stuff down a lot of times. So it's faster. Yeah. So I do it pretty often, actually.
Do you put it in a separate album or you just know that it's there?
I know that it's there. I might favorite it depending on what it is.
Yeah.
But I don't spend time putting stuff in albums because I take way too many pictures and delete a lot of pictures. That's like a whole separate thing.
That's a different conversation because, I have albums of like my boys together. I have albums of Fritzy and albums of just Elliot and albums of just Owen. Yeah,
for sure. I think that it's similar to putting things in chronological order in a notebook, right? I know the before and after in my phone. So I know where to look on an iPhone. You can look up a place where the photo was taken. You can look up a date, a month, a year, all these sorts of things.
Or the word. If there were words, now you can look up the words.
There's a lot of different options. So this is a great tool to use because what do you always have with you? Your phone.
Your phone. And learners are comfortable with taking pictures.
Yeah.
Right? So this is something that's intuitive, but we have to make the implicit explicit. And I strongly recommend teaching your learners to do that next step of putting it in an important paper or even label the album important so that it is easily accessible. This first example has to be with permission.
Yes, it does. So the example is homework on the board. Some teachers write out who don't necessarily do things digitally because as we've talked about, teachers all do different things different ways. So some teachers write out a week or a month on a board and just leave it there. Or like I have kids who are doing interactive notebooks and it'll say the page with the title that has to be on there. So I'm like, take a picture of all the titles and pages. But also, some of my kids are in support classes, and in those support classes, the teachers put up all the homework for all the different classes. So as a backup, you take a picture of that. That doesn't replace using a planner, but it's a backup.
As my dad says, it's a backup that doesn't slow the car down. So if you're new to the podcast, you haven't heard that story, but my dad would always say when I was like hemming and hawing about, should I take this on a trip or whatever? Just take it, Rachel. It's not going to slow the plane down or the car down.
Yeah.
So it's not going to slow anything down by grabbing it. What's another example of when you can use photographs?
So lists when you don't have time to write it down in the moment. There's definitely things in my own life where I'll take a picture of it because I don't have time to write it down. This is like a phone number that's somewhere. Or I'll give you another interesting example. How about at Disneyland, they take photographs and they give you a number so that you can download the photograph. And I see people standing there with their phones inputting the number. Well, you only have a second before they get rid of it. Take a photo and then input it.
Or can you input it later entirely?
Yes, but you take a photo of the number.
You take a photo of the number, and then at the end of the day, you can go back and grab them all, right?
Yep, exactly. So I go to Disneyland a lot, but I see people who are sitting there trying to input it into their phone and they're rushing and it's like a stressful experience for them. And I'm like, oh, just take a picture real quick and then you can move on with your life. Anyway, moving on.
And then another idea that we used often is when a learner has a physical assignment, and this is great for those learners who are like, oh, I finished it, right? First of all, an assignment is not finished until it is in the hands of the teacher, but also,
where did they put it?
Where did they put it? And so if you have one of those learners who's not yet adopted a system that keeps everything in one place, and if they haven't, go ahead and reach out to us at Kapp Ed Therapy Group or M.Ed Therapist, and we'll help them get their systems in order and then teach them how to maintain them. But take a picture as you're done with a physical assignment. Obviously, you don't need to be doing doing that with a digital one, unless you do because you don't label the document and you haven't yet learned how to put everything in Google Docs. So go ahead and take a picture of that. So at least you don't have to reinvent the wheel in the event that you lose that piece of paper.
Yeah. So another thing is that I've had kids do is if you don't have access to make a photocopy of something, right? For instance,
right.
A lot of teachers have you fill out like a study guide, and then they might have you turn it in before the test.
You take a picture of that blank study guide.
Yes, you do.
You take a picture of that blank study guide, because you can go back and listen to our earlier episodes on studying. We'll go ahead and link those in the show notes. But you want to be able to do these things multiple times so you can figure out what you know versus what you don't.
Mm-hmm.
Another idea is what something should look like.
I love this.
So we mean a physical space. So when a room is clean, for example,
this is my favorite.
You can take a picture of this is what it should look like, which allows learners to know what the ultimate end goal is. And you can even print out the photo and have it be next to that item. So this was something we used to do when I was teaching preschool.
Yeah.
This is what the bins are supposed to look like. So make it match the photo.
Yeah, we actually did an episode about this because it reminds me of the Bernstein Bears book, Messy Room. We did an episode about a messy room and what it should look like. So we'll link that as well. It's actually a pretty downloaded episode.
Well, because it's a major problem.
It is a major problem.
And then similarly, the packed backpack, what a backpack should look like, what a lunchbox should look like. This is all those things of what the ultimate goal. If we're trying to foster independence and you are tired of verbally explaining it, go ahead and take a photograph so they can match and see what they're supposed to do.
And this is also really good for learners who don't know how to read yet.
Yes.
You can take a photograph and they can copy. Kids can do these things. So it's a great little hack.
Yep.
And then the other thing is what needs to leave the house with you.
Absolutely.
Do you have all your practice gear? Do you have your lunch? Do you have your backpack? Do you have your Chromebook? Do you have all the things that you're going to need for the day? It's a checklist, but it's a visual checklist. And some kids are much better with visual checklists than they are written checklists.
Yep. So those are just some of the ideas and opportunities where you can use photographs to support executive functioning in your homes, with your learners that you're working with your families. And we hope that in this episode, we made the implicit explicit, because I do think it's something we all sort of naturally do. Mm-hmm. But it needs to be something that we are teaching our learners to do and to use tools that they are naturally familiar with. And believe me, all these learners are familiar with this. And then we can foster some beginnings of independence for our learners.
I love it.
While reducing clutter around us as well.
Yeah, it's a great tool. Use it.
With that, have a great week, Smarties.
Have a great week.